The applause began before Deputy Director Robert Hayes finished pinning the medal to my jacket. I looked past the reporters and government officials toward the right side of the auditorium. 17 empty chairs stood beneath the stage. A name had been placed on every seat. 6 days earlier, those 17 people had been locked inside a refrigerated container at Ravenport Harbor. The temperature had already fallen below freezing when my team reached them. Now they were alive. That mattered more than the medal. Special Agent Ethan Cole demonstrated exceptional judgment under pressure. Hayes said, when forced to choose between pursuing a fleeing suspect and rescuing 17 trafficking victims, he chose the lives in front of him. The audience stood. My 5-year-old daughter, Sophie, waved from the third row. Claire sat beside her, smiling through visible exhaustion. I had missed Sophie's school performance and canceled dinner 3 times that month. Claire had stopped asking when I would be home. My answers never changed. I don't know. It's classified. 2 rows behind them sat Derek Vaughn. He was applauding with everyone else. His expression was controlled. His eyes were not. They stayed fixed on the medal. Derek and I had entered the agency in the same year. His shooting scores were higher, and he was faster in tactical drills. He believed that made him the better agent. At Ravenport Harbor, a black harbor coordinator had escaped through the east loading bay. Derek took 2 agents and went after him. Then I heard pounding from inside the refrigerated container. The plan prioritized the coordinator. The people inside had minutes. I ordered the pursuit team back. Derek ignored me and continued after the suspect. I took the remaining agents to the container. We broke the lock, forced the doors open, and pulled 17 victims into the warehouse. State police captured the coordinator 40 miles away. No target was lost. No victim died, but only one of us received a medal. After the ceremony, Derek approached me with his hand extended. Congratulations. I shook it. You were part of the operation. That isn't what they'll print tomorrow. His grip tightened. I met his eyes. The victims are alive. That is what matters. To you, maybe. A photographer called our names. Derek stood beside me and smiled for the camera. The moment the flash ended, the smile disappeared. Claire and Sophie came toward me. Sophie touched the medal with one finger. Is it heavy? Not really. Can I wear it when we get home? Claire looked relieved by that answer, as if hearing the word home meant I would actually return with them. Then Hayes appeared beside us. Cole. My office. Claire's shoulders lowered. Now, Hayes looked at her. I'm afraid so. I handed Sophie to Claire. I won't be long. Claire gave me a tired smile. You always say that. She turned toward the exit before I could answer. I followed Hayes into the hallway. Near the elevators, Derek watched Hayes open the secure corridor and saw me enter it. Inside the office, Hayes locked the door and lowered the blinds. A black file rested on his desk. It had no case number and no agency seal. He broke the red security strip and removed a photograph of a white refrigerated truck. Harbor Freight Solutions was printed across its side. Legitimate company, Hayes said. 12 interstate routes. Clean record. He placed photographs of missing women and teenagers beside it. Black Harbor. Hayes nodded. The harbor raid damaged one regional route. It did not touch the organization. We arrested their coordinator. We arrested a man who knew 2 drivers and 1 warehouse. He opened 3 personnel files. The first man had disappeared. The second had been found dead near the state line. The third was lying in a federal hospital with permanent damage to his spine. Informants? I asked. The first 2. Hayes touched the third file. He was one of ours. The room became quiet. Black Harbor is recruiting a transportation coordinator. Hayes continued. They want military experience, knowledge of interstate routes, and someone desperate enough to ignore what the cargo looks like. He pushed another file toward me. My photograph appeared on the first page. The name beneath it was Eric Dalton, former Army transportation specialist. 18 months in prison for aggravated assault. Divorced. No children. More than $100,000 in gambling debt. When do I go in? You can refuse. That wasn't my question. Hayes studied me for several seconds. The operation begins when you leave this office. I turned the page. Who knows? You. Me. Maya Torres. No one else. No one. Derek. Especially not Derek. I closed the file. What do I tell Claire? Extended training. She won't believe me. She doesn't need to believe you. She needs to remain outside the operation. I looked at the photographs again. Some of the missing victims were barely older than children. I picked up Eric Dalton's identification card. I'm in. Hayes did not congratulate me. He gathered the photographs and returned them to the black file. There is one more problem. I waited. We believe Black Harbor has received information from inside the agency. An internal leak. We don't know who. We don't know how much they've seen. He leaned forward. If your identity is compromised, do not trust an extraction order unless it comes through the agreed channel. Understood. Do not return to headquarters. I nodded. Do not go home. My hand tightened around the false identification. Hayes's voice remained calm. From the moment you leave this office, your wife cannot know where you are going. I thought of Claire waiting in the parking lot, of Sophie expecting to wear my medal when we got home. Then I put Eric Dalton's identification into my pocket. Ethan Cole had received a medal that morning. By nightfall, he would no longer exist. Eric Dalton entered Black Harbor 3 days after Ethan Cole received a medal. The transformation was simple. Different haircut, 3 days of stubble, cheap clothes, a criminal record that existed only inside protected federal databases. According to those records, Eric Dalton had spent 18 months in prison for aggravated assault. Former Army transportation specialist. Divorced. No children. Gambling debt. Bad temper. Exactly the kind of man Black Harbor could use. My first contact happened behind a truck repair shop near Ravenport's industrial district. A man named Curtis Lane handed me an envelope containing $800. Drive the truck to Baltimore. What's inside? His expression changed. I shrugged. Wrong question. Very. I pocketed the money. When do I leave? That answer earned me my first step inside their transportation network. It also cost me another night at home. By the end of the second week, Claire had stopped asking when I would return. That worried me more than the arguments. One Thursday afternoon, I came home and found Sophie sitting at the kitchen table with crayons spread around her. Daddy. She held up a piece of paper. 3 people stood beside a square house. Claire and Sophie were inside. I was standing outside the front door. What's this? My family picture. Why am I outside? She considered the question. Because you're always going somewhere. Claire looked at me from across the kitchen. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Sophie pushed a blue crayon toward me. Teacher says parents can help. I sat beside her. Then let's fix my terrible shirt. She laughed. I had been coloring for less than 4 minutes when my secure phone vibrated. One message. Move. I stood. Claire stared at me. No, Claire. No. Sophie stopped coloring. Claire lowered her voice. You just got home. I know. You promised her. I know. You promised me too. I reached for my jacket. I have to go. That's always the answer. I can't explain. I'm not asking for classified information. Ethan. I'm asking when my husband is going to be part of this family again. I had no answer I was allowed to give her. That was the problem. I kissed Sophie's forehead. I'll finish the picture later. She nodded. Claire didn't look at me. I left. I learned later that Derek's first encounter with Claire happened the following afternoon. She was leaving a shopping center when he approached her. According to Claire, he seemed surprised. Claire. Derek. He smiled. Small world. They talked for less than 5 minutes. Mostly about Sophie. Mostly about me. Derek told her I was one of the best agents he had ever worked with. That mattered. People trust criticism from enemies. They trust praise from rivals even more. The second encounter happened 4 days later. Claire's car wouldn't start near Sophie's school. Derek appeared 20 minutes later. He helped arrange a tow truck. Claire would eventually learn that the battery cable had been deliberately loosened. At the time, she saw only an old colleague helping Ethan Cole's wife. The third encounter happened near a grocery store. That was when Derek mentioned Maya Torres. Casually, carefully. You know Maya, right? Claire didn't. Derek apparently paused, then smiled. Forget I said anything. That sentence did exactly what it was designed to do. Claire didn't forget. 2 nights later, she asked me, who is Maya? I was taking my service weapon apart at the kitchen counter. My hands stopped. Maya Torres. So there is a Maya. She works for the agency. What does she do? I can't discuss her assignments. Claire laughed once. There was no humor in it. Of course you can't. Where did you hear her name? Does it matter? Yes. She folded her arms. Derek mentioned her. That got my attention. Derek Vaughn. You work with him. I know who he is. Then why are you looking at me like that? I didn't answer. At that point, Derek was still a federal agent. Difficult, competitive, resentful. But none of those things made him a criminal. Not yet. 3 days later, Claire placed a photograph on the kitchen table. It showed Maya and me entering an apartment building on West Mercer Street. I recognized the location immediately. An old federal observation point. Maya and I had used it for a 30-minute intelligence exchange. Claire saw something else. Tell me what I'm looking at. Work. At an apartment. Yes. With her. Yes. Then explain it. I can't. Her eyes filled with anger. Do you understand how insane that sounds? Yes. You disappear for days. You lie about where you are. You miss Sophie's school events. Now I find out you're meeting some woman in an apartment. And your answer is that you can't explain. I'm not having an affair. Then prove it. I can't discuss an operation. There it is again. She pushed the photograph toward me. Your job gets an explanation. Your agency gets an explanation. Everyone gets something from you except your wife. I wanted to tell her everything. Black Harbor, Eric Dalton, the missing victims, the 3 informants. Couldn't. So I said the only thing I was permitted to say. Trust me. Claire stared at me. I've been doing that for 7 years. She walked upstairs. The photograph remained on the table. I picked it up. Something about it bothered me. Not Maya. Not the building. The angle. The picture had been taken from across the street. Someone had known where we would be. 2 days later, I noticed the passenger seat in Claire's car had been moved back. She was 5'6". She never drove with it that far from the dashboard. Then I found a parking receipt in the cup holder. West Mercer Street, the same neighborhood as the observation point. I said nothing. The following evening, I left headquarters and changed routes 3 times. A gray SUV remained 6 cars behind me. It disappeared whenever I slowed, returned whenever traffic thickened. Not professional surveillance. Too inconsistent, too nervous. I caught the driver's reflection in a storefront window. Claire. I kept driving. My first emotion wasn't anger. It was concern. Claire didn't know how to conduct surveillance, which meant someone had given her a reason to try. I needed to know what she was looking for. More importantly, I needed to know who was waiting for whatever she found. So I gave her something. West Mercer had another apartment once used by our unit. The operation had abandoned it months earlier. No files, no weapons, no active personnel. The remote safety equipment was still connected. I visited the apartment twice, carried a locked case inside, left at irregular hours. On the 3rd visit, I deliberately placed the address on a handwritten note inside the pocket of a jacket I left at home. Claire found it. I knew because the note was returned facing the opposite direction. I also knew she followed me there the next evening. I entered the building, waited 20 minutes, then left through the service exit. Claire remained parked across the street. I didn't confront her. I needed the next link. She photographed the building. Later, phone records would show that she contacted Derek. She told him she believed I was meeting Maya there. She gave him the address. She asked him to find out the truth. Derek told her he would handle it. Claire believed she had given a federal agent the location of an apartment where her husband might be cheating. She had no idea what he did next. At 11:43 p.m. Derek used a prepaid phone. The message went to a number connected to Black Harbor. Contained one address, then one sentence. The federal agent you're looking for is here. The black SUV appeared on West Mercer Street at 11:17 p.m., passed the apartment building once. 2 minutes later, it returned from the opposite direction and stopped in the rear alley. I watched through a live camera feed from an unmarked utility van 2 blocks away. 4 men got out. 1 remained with the vehicle. The other 3 moved toward the building. They did not look around like burglars. They did not check the apartment numbers. They already knew exactly where they were going. 2 carried long black tool bags. The bags were large enough to hold suppressed rifles. Maya's voice came through my earpiece. 3 entering through the service door. 1 outside. I see them. Do you want local units? Not yet. The abandoned apartment had once been used by our agency as an observation point. There were no files inside, no weapons, no active operation, only a table, several empty storage boxes, and an old communications cabinet. The emergency systems could still be controlled remotely. That was why I had chosen it. The men entered the 3rd-floor hallway. 1 stopped near the stairs. Another tested the apartment door. The lock opened in less than 10 seconds. Professional equipment, professional movement. This was no husband checking whether his wife's suspicions were true. Someone had sent armed men to kill a federal agent. The moment they entered the apartment, my test was over. The building still contained more than 30 occupied units. Children lived on the 4th floor. An elderly couple lived directly below the observation apartment. I was not going to wait for the men to discover the room was empty and begin searching elsewhere. Activate the evacuation system, I said. Maya hesitated. That tells them the location was monitored. They already brought rifles. Activate it. She entered the command. Every fire alarm in the building went off. Red lights began flashing above the exits. Inside the abandoned apartment, the sprinkler system activated. Water poured from the ceiling. The men stopped moving. 1 opened the bedroom. Another checked the empty communications cabinet. The 3rd went to the window. Residents began entering the hallways. I used a prepaid phone to call emergency services. Ravenport Emergency Dispatch. There are armed men inside 218 West Mercer. Are you in the building? No. What kind of weapons? Rifles. 3rd floor. Rear apartment. Can you describe the suspects? I ended the call. The purpose was not to create a shootout. It was to surround the building with enough police officers and firefighters that the men would be forced to leave without harming anyone. The first fire engine arrived in 4 minutes. 2 patrol cars followed. More residents gathered on the sidewalk. Some carried children. Others wore coats over pajamas. Firefighters began moving everyone toward the far side of the street. On the camera feed, the armed men changed their appearance. 1 removed his jacket. Another pushed a rifle deeper into the tool bag. The 3rd pulled a reflective maintenance vest from his backpack. The man near the SUV placed 2 orange safety helmets on the back seat. They're going to leave as contractors. Maya said, yes, I can notify the patrol officers. No, they could arrest all 4, and we would get 4 hired men. I opened a compartment beneath the van's dashboard. Inside were a gray sweatshirt, a baseball cap, and a small magnetic tracking device. I changed clothes. My service weapon went into a concealed pouch at my waist. Then I left the van and walked toward the evacuated residence. I kept my head down. No tactical posture. No direct eye contact. Just another tired tenant standing outside because someone had triggered a fire alarm. The first 2 men came through the front entrance. Both wore maintenance vests. 1 carried the long tool bag. A firefighter stopped them. You work here. The taller man nodded. 3rd floor renovation. Move across the street until we clear the building. He obeyed. No argument. No sudden movement. That made him more dangerous. Not less. The 3rd man appeared 30 seconds later. He had changed his hat. He had not changed his boots. Black tactical boots. Wet from the sprinklers. The driver joined them near the corner. They did not speak. 1 by 1, they moved toward the alley. I followed the crowd until I was close enough to see the SUV. A police officer stepped toward the alley. The men slowed. For a moment, I thought they might abandon the vehicle. Then a firefighter called the officer away to help clear an emergency lane. The men continued. I moved closer. A woman carrying a small dog bumped into my shoulder. I let my phone fall. It landed beside the SUV's rear tire. I crouched. My left hand picked up the phone. My right hand pressed the tracker against the underside of the frame. The magnet caught. 2 seconds. That was all I needed. I stood. The tallest man looked directly at me. He studied my face, then my hands. I gave him an irritated look. Great night for a fire alarm. He turned away. The 4 men entered the SUV. The engine started. I walked back toward the crowd without watching them leave. People who stare are remembered. Maya spoke through my earpiece. Tracker is active. Let them go. The SUV turned east. It avoided the closest interstate entrance. Then it changed direction twice in 6 blocks. They're checking for surveillance. Maya said, "That's why we're not following them." I returned to the utility van. The tracker appeared as a red point moving across the city map. The SUV entered a parking garage. It stayed inside for 7 minutes. When it came out, the license plate had changed. The red point continued south, past the warehouse district, past the rail yards. Then it entered an industrial area where public cameras were limited. Maya enlarged the map. 46 registered businesses. We only need one. The SUV slowed, passed through a security gate. Then the red point stopped. Maya opened the property record. A company logo appeared on the screen. A white refrigerated truck inside a dark blue circle. I recognized it. It was the same company Hayes had shown me in his office. Harbor Freight Solutions. Maya read from the public file. Interstate carrier. Clean inspection record. No major criminal complaints. Publicly. Do you want a team on the property? No. Those men just drove into a company we've been trying to connect to Black Harbor for 3 years. If we move now, they'll burn everything before we understand what we found. I watched the red point remain inside the property. The 4 men had believed they were going to kill a federal agent. Instead, they had led me to one of Black Harbor's legitimate fronts. They thought the safe house had been their trap. They were wrong. The trap had been mine. The red dot stayed inside Harbor Freight Solutions for 43 minutes. We never moved closer. That was deliberate. If 4 armed men had just returned from a failed attempt to kill a federal agent, someone inside that property would be watching for surveillance. So Maya and I let the city watch for us. Traffic cameras picked up the SUV when it left at 12:31 a.m. The license plate had changed again. It drove north, entered a parking garage, exited 11 minutes later, then disappeared beneath an interstate overpass. We didn't follow it. We didn't need to. We had the company. By sunrise, Maya had started pulling public records. Harbor Freight Solutions looked clean. 48 trucks, 3 distribution yards, interstate freight contracts, no serious federal violations, no obvious connection to Victor Kane. That was exactly what bothered me. Black Harbor had survived for years because its legitimate businesses looked legitimate. Maya turned her monitor toward me. I found something. A map appeared. Red markers covered 7 states. What am I looking at? Missing person reports. She added a second layer. Blue lines appeared across the map. Harbor freight delivery routes. The overlap wasn't perfect. It didn't need to be. 4 women had disappeared within 3 miles of scheduled harbor freight stops. 2 more vanished near motels used by company drivers. One 14-year-old girl had last been seen at a truck stop less than an hour before a harbor freight vehicle passed through. Enough for a warrant? I asked. No. Enough to keep looking. Maya nodded. Definitely. Hayes entered the room carrying a thin folder. We have another problem. He placed it on the table. West Mercer, the fake safe house. I ordered a full audit of every internal system. He said. No one accessed that address. Not even archived files. Nothing. That changed the question. If the address had not leaked through the agency, then Black Harbor had received it outside official channels. Hayes looked at me. Who knew you were using the apartment? Maya. Anyone else? No. Maya folded her arms. And Claire. Hayes looked at me. I said nothing. I already knew Claire had followed me. But knowing my wife had followed me and proving she had passed the address to someone were different things. I pulled the exterior surveillance from West Mercer. The camera across the street had recorded the previous 3 days. I moved backward through the footage, then stopped. Claire's gray SUV appeared. She parked across from the building. She stayed there for 27 minutes. The next evening, she returned. This time she photographed the entrance. Hayes watched without speaking. Maya asked quietly, "Do you want me to check her recent contacts?" My jaw tightened. Yes. The answer hurt more than I expected. Claire was my wife. She was also now part of an information leak that had nearly sent armed men into an occupied apartment building. I could not treat those facts separately. Maya began working. Phone metadata, public cameras, parking records, nothing that required reading Claire's private messages. We were looking for patterns. Took 40 minutes. Then Maya stopped typing. Ethan. A photograph appeared on the screen. Claire stood beside her disabled car near Sophie's school. A man was leaning over the open hood. Derek Vaughn. Maya opened another image. Shopping center parking lot. Claire. Derek. The third. Outside a grocery store. Same two people. 3 encounters. Different locations. Different days. I stared at the screen. Derek had told Claire about Maya. He had somehow obtained a photograph of Maya and me entering West Mercer. Now I knew he had been spending time around my wife before she began following me. Hayes reached for his phone. I'm putting an internal team on Vaughn. No. He stopped. If he passed your location to Black Harbor, he just helped arrange an attack on a federal agent. Hayes stared at me. You still think this is coincidence? No. I looked at Derek's face on the monitor. But suspicion isn't evidence. Maya understood first. You want to test him? Yes. Hayes lowered the phone. Explain. If we arrest Derek now, what do we have? I pointed toward the screen. He spoke to my wife. He appeared near her several times. He knew about Maya. That proves manipulation. It doesn't prove he contacted Black Harbor. Hayes said nothing. And if he is the leak, I continued, arresting him gives us one corrupt agent. I pointed toward the harbor freight map. Leaving him in place might give us Victor Kane. Maya leaned back. You want to feed him something. Something false. Through Claire. Not this time. I shook my head. I don't know how much Claire understands yet. Saying her name felt different now. I thought about the apartment. The 4 armed men. The residents carrying children into the street. Then I thought about Claire sitting in her car. Watching the building because she believed I might be meeting another woman. Those 2 realities were connected. I just didn't know exactly how. Hayes walked toward the window. If Vaughn is involved, he knows our systems, which is why the information has to look real. And if Black Harbor acts on it, then we know who carried it out. Maya turned toward her computer. We can create different versions. Not yet. I looked at Hayes. 1 version. 1 target. 1 person with access. Hayes understood. Derek. I nodded. The anger was there. I could feel it underneath everything. A man I had worked beside for years had inserted himself into my marriage. Maybe he had used my wife to send armed men after me. Every instinct told me to walk downstairs and drag the truth out of him. But anger wasn't evidence. And Derek wasn't the real target. Black Harbor was. If Derek had opened a door into that organization, arresting him now would close it. I wanted to know where it led. Hayes finally returned to the table. What do you need? I looked at Derek's photograph one more time. Then at the map of harbor freight routes. Give Derek an operation plan. Hayes narrowed his eyes. A real one? No. I closed the folder. Give him one that only he can see. I returned home the next evening. Claire opened the door before I reached for my key. For 1 second, she only stared at me. Her eyes moved over my face. My hands. My jacket. She was checking for injuries. That told me she had expected something to happen. Are you okay? She asked. I'm fine. Where were you last night? Working. Her shoulders tightened. The same answer. The same wall. I stepped inside. Sophie ran from the living room and wrapped herself around my leg. You came back. The words were simple. They still hurt. I lifted her. I told you I would. She pointed toward the kitchen table. Our picture isn't finished. The family drawing from the previous week was still there. Claire and Sophie stood inside the house. I stood outside the front door. A blue crayon waited beside the paper. I remember. Claire closed the door behind me. Did anything happen on West Mercer Street? I looked at her. What do you mean? There was something on the local news. A fire alarm. And police. It's Ravenport. Police go to apartment buildings every night. Her gaze stayed on me. You weren't there. No. That answer was true. I had never entered the apartment that night. Claire looked away first. She could have told me then. She could have admitted she had followed me. that she had photographed the building, that she had given the address to Derek. Instead, she walked toward the kitchen. "Dinner is getting cold." I followed her. On the table sat baked chicken, green beans, and mashed potatoes. Normal food, normal house, normal family. Only none of it felt normal anymore. I sat beside Sophie and picked up the blue crayon. "Where should I be?" She pointed inside the house. "Here, beside Claire." I drew myself next to them. Sophie smiled. Claire watched in silence. My secure phone remained in my pocket. The device was connected to Maya's system at headquarters. At that exact moment, Hayes was placing a false operation plan inside a restricted case management folder. The file appeared legitimate. A meeting with a Black Harbor informant. 3 nights later, an abandoned warehouse beside the Raven River. The report claimed I would arrive alone. No tactical support, no surveillance team. Only one agent outside Hayes's office had permission to open it. Derek Vaughn. Sophie added a yellow sun above the house. "Daddy, you forgot the door." I thought doors were supposed to stay open. "No." She drew a thick black line across it. "Doors keep bad people out." Claire's hand stopped above her plate. Neither of us said anything. My phone vibrated once. I did not check it. Not in front of her. Claire studied me. "Are you leaving again?" "Not tonight. Can you promise?" I looked at Sophie, then at Claire. "No." Her expression hardened. "At least you're honest about that." I finished the picture with Sophie. Read her a bedtime story. Waited until she fell asleep. When I returned downstairs, Claire was standing by the kitchen window. "Do you still love me?" she asked. The question caught me off guard. "Yes." "Then why does it always feel like I'm the last person to know anything about you?" "Because people with rifles had entered an apartment after she gave its address to another man. Because one of my colleagues might be working with a trafficking organization. Because telling her anything could place Sophie in danger." I could not say any of that. "My work has rules. So does marriage." "I know. Do you?" Her voice remained low. "I gave up my job because your schedule made 2 careers impossible. I take Sophie to school. I handle every bill, every appointment, every emergency. You disappear, and I'm expected to trust that none of it concerns me." I set the drawing on the table. "You could have told me you didn't trust me." Claire looked at me sharply. "What is that supposed to mean?" Exactly what I said. For a moment, I thought she might confess. Then she folded her arms. "I do trust you." The lie was quiet. That made it worse. My phone vibrated again. This time I checked it. A message from Maya. File accessed. 9:42 p.m. Derek had opened the operation plan. I returned the phone to my pocket. Claire watched me. "Work." "Yes, of course." I left the kitchen without confronting her. The truth was no longer something I could demand. It was something I had to prove. At 10:18 p.m. Derek left headquarters. City cameras recorded his car entering a 24-hour gas station 12 minutes later. He did not buy fuel. He remained inside for 6 minutes. Then he drove home. 10:31. A prepaid phone near that gas station contacted a number associated with a Harbor Freight dispatcher. The call lasted 47 seconds. That alone was not enough. But the next morning, one Harbor Freight truck changed routes. A second vehicle entered the Raven River warehouse district. By noon, Maya had identified 3 men positioning cameras around the abandoned warehouse named in our false plan. One parked across from the southern entrance. Another entered a building with a clear view of the loading bay. The third placed a vehicle behind the warehouse, facing the only unmonitored exit. Black Harbor had prepared an ambush for a meeting that did not exist. Hayes and I watched the surveillance feed from a secure room. He stood behind me. "That confirms the leak. Confirms Derek accessed the file. And Black Harbor acted on it." "Yes." Hayes placed both hands on the table. "I can have internal affairs arrest him before sunset." I watched one of the men check the sight on a rifle. Derek had not merely leaked information. He had given armed criminals the location where he believed I would be alone. Whatever line he once believed he had not crossed was gone. Still, arresting him now would end the connection. We would have Derek. We would have several hired men. Victor Kane would disappear. "No," I said. Hayes turned toward me. "Ethan, he thinks the first address failed." He'll want to prove he can still give them something useful. You're suggesting we leave a traitor inside the agency. I'm suggesting we control what the traitor sees. Maya looked between us. And if he keeps passing it on, then every lie we give him becomes a reaction we can trace. Hayes studied me. This is no longer only about Black Harbor. I thought of Claire standing in the kitchen, telling me she trusted me. I thought of Sophie drawing a closed door to keep bad people outside. No, I said. It isn't. Hayes reached for the false operation file. I stopped him. Don't delete it. He looked at me. I pointed toward Derek's access record. Give him another one. The second false file appeared in the system the next morning. It looked like an internal threat assessment. One Black Harbor driver had supposedly agreed to cooperate with us. His name was Alan Mercer. The report said he would be moved into protective custody within 48 hours. Alan Mercer was real. His cooperation was not. The file was visible to 7 people. Each person saw a slightly different version. Different pickup time, different safe location, different vehicle description. Derek's version said Mercer would be collected at 6:30 a.m. from a motel on Route 17. Maya built a tracking log behind every copy. If anyone opened, printed, photographed, or transferred the file, we would know. At 2:14 p.m. Derek accessed his version. 3:02. A harbor freight supervisor called Mercer and changed his route. 4:10. Mercer left Ravenport in a refrigerated truck. He never went near the Route 17 motel. Black Harbor had moved him because they believed he was about to talk. The first false file had produced an ambush. The second produced a transfer. We were no longer testing whether Derek was leaking information. We were testing how Black Harbor reacted to different kinds of danger. Hayes stood behind Maya's chair as she tracked Mercer's truck. We can stop it at the state line. No, I said. Mercer may know something. He knows the person who gives him routes. That could be enough. It could also be the only connection he knows. I pointed at the screen. If we arrest him, his dispatcher disappears. Hayes looked at me. You're willing to let a suspected trafficker keep driving. For now. That was the part people misunderstood about investigations. An arrest felt like progress. Sometimes it was only noise. The third file appeared 2 days later. A tactical plan for a raid on an abandoned furniture warehouse. The location had no connection to Black Harbor. The document claimed federal agents believed the warehouse contained forged identification and victim records. Derek's copy listed the raid for Friday night. He opened the file at 8:06 a.m. By Thursday afternoon, 3 harbor freight vehicles arrived at the warehouse. Men carried out boxes that had not been there the day before. They placed the boxes in separate trucks and sent them in 3 directions. Maya followed all 3 through traffic cameras. One truck returned to Harbor Freight. The second went to a self-storage facility. The third stopped outside Northline Employment Agency, a legitimate labor company that specialized in temporary housekeeping positions. The same kind of jobs used to recruit several missing women. The false raid had revealed 2 more pieces of the network. Still want to arrest Derek? I asked. Hayes didn't answer. The fourth file concerned an accountant named Leonard Price. Price handled payroll for a harbor freight subcontractor. The report claimed he had contacted federal investigators and offered financial records. He had done no such thing. Derek opened the report shortly before noon. That afternoon, 2 men began watching Price's office. Not arresting him. Not moving him. Watching. That reaction mattered. Black Harbor did not know whether Price was guilty. Someone higher in the organization wanted confirmation before acting. I spent 3 hours near the office in Eric Dalton's clothes. Old jacket, work boots, unshaven. One observer sat inside a parked sedan. The second moved between a coffee shop and the building lobby. At 5:40 p.m. a third man arrived. He did not look at Price's office. He walked past the sedan and dropped a folded newspaper into a trash can. The driver collected it 30 seconds later. That was the man I followed. Not closely. He checked reflections in store windows. Stopped twice without reason. Used a bus to cross 6 blocks. Then left through the rear door just before it closed. He knew enough to detect ordinary surveillance. So I did not behave like surveillance. I crossed the street ahead of him. Bought coffee. Waited inside a pharmacy. then used the reflection in the refrigerator doors to watch him enter a self-storage facility. The same facility one of the trucks had visited after the false warehouse raid. Maya's voice came through my earpiece. Do you want a team? No, you're alone. I'm not entering his unit. The man walked to a row of indoor lockers. He opened number 314, removed a small metal cash box, placed the folded newspaper inside, then took out a different phone. He left 3 minutes later. I waited 12. The hallway camera pointed toward the entrance, not the lockers. I entered wearing a maintenance cap and carrying a clipboard. Locker 314 used a standard pin tumbler lock. Old, cheap. I did not open it. Not then. I pressed a small strip of molding compound against the keyway, then walked away. The impression gave us the lock profile. Maya produced a working key before midnight. The next exchange took place 2 days later. This time, Hayes had a warrant covering the locker and everything placed inside it. We entered 30 minutes before the courier arrived. The cash box contained 6 prepaid phones, 4 envelopes of money, a handwritten list of vehicle numbers, and 1 digital recorder. Black Harbor was using the locker as a dead drop. We photographed everything. Then I installed 2 devices, a tracker inside the cash box lining, a microphone beneath the recorder's battery compartment. We returned every item exactly as we found it. The courier arrived at 9:08 p.m. He opened the box, removed 1 phone, left 2 envelopes of cash, then closed the locker. The tracker followed the box across Ravenport. It stopped at a private parking structure near the harbor. The microphone transmitted for the first time 20 minutes later. A man spoke. His voice was low, controlled. He never raised it. Mercer was moved too quickly. The courier answered. We received confirmed federal information. No information is confirmed until the source survives being wrong. There was a pause. Then the man continued. The warehouse was empty. The accountant is clean. Someone is testing our response. Maya looked at me. The voice went on. Reduce contact with the federal source. The courier asked. Do we cut him off? No. He may still be useful. That single sentence told me Derek was not speaking directly to the top. He was passing information through layers, exactly as Black Harbor handled everything else. The courier mentioned UADGSON, month-end settlement. The voice corrected him immediately. Do not use that phrase outside secured rooms. What changes at the end of the month? Routes are reconciled, counts are checked, and the regional managers report discrepancies. I leaned closer to the speaker. Regional managers, multiple routes, a central review. We had spent years searching for a structure Black Harbor kept divided. At the end of every month, parts of that structure moved closer together. The courier asked, what if the central ledger is exposed? The answer came without hesitation. If the central ledger is exposed, every regional manager handles it together. The transmission ended. No location, no date beyond the end of the month. But for the first time, we had heard the man giving orders above the transport level. Hayes looked at Maya. Can you identify the voice? Not yet. I already knew who I believed it was. Victor Kane. But belief was not proof. The tracker began moving again. I watched it leave the harbor. We're not close enough. Hayes said. No, we still don't know where they meet. Not yet. I replayed the last sentence. Every regional manager. Together. Black Harbor had survived because Victor kept every part separated. But if the central ledger was threatened, he would break his own rule. That was the weakness we needed. We did not have the meeting place. We did not have the ledger. But now we knew what would force Victor to bring both into the open. Claire called Robert Hayes at 8:17 on Monday morning. Not me. Hayes. That told me she was afraid. By then, Derek had stopped pretending his interest was about our marriage. At first, his questions had sounded harmless. Was Ethan coming home more often? Was he still meeting Maya? Had Claire found anything else? Then the questions changed. What time did I usually leave? Did I ever use another car? Did I keep spare keys at home? Did I carry the same phone every day? Did I ever mention the harbor? Claire had answered some of them, not because she knew what Derek was doing, because she still believed he was helping her understand me. Then her car went back to the repair shop. The mechanic remembered the previous problem. Claire asked him whether the electrical failure could happen again. He looked at the service record. Then he checked the wiring. This wasn't normal wear. Claire stared at him. What do you mean? The connector was loosened manually. Could it happen by accident? He shook his head. Not like this. That was when she started looking backward. Not at me. Derek. She went through months of messages. The shopping center where he had supposedly run into her. The school parking lot. The coffee shop. The day her car failed. The photograph of Maya and me entering an apartment. Every coincidence had happened shortly before Derek asked her something about my schedule. Once Claire stopped looking for proof that I was cheating, the pattern became obvious. Derek had never been investigating my marriage. He had been investigating me. Claire tested him before she called Hayes. She sent Derek one message. Ethan is going to the harbor tonight. His response came less than a minute later. Which terminal? Claire did not answer. Another message arrived. Do you know what time? Then another. Is he going alone? She stared at the screen for almost 5 minutes. Derek called twice. She ignored both calls. Then she contacted Hayes. I listened from the room next door. There was a one-way audio feed between the interview room and the operations office. Hayes sat across from Claire. Maya was beside me. Neither of us spoke. Claire looked exhausted. Her hand stayed wrapped around a paper cup she never drank from. Hayes placed a recorder on the table. You asked to speak with me. Claire nodded. I think Derek Vaughn has been using me. Hayes did not react. Start at the beginning. She did. The shopping center. The car. The school. Maya. The photographs. The questions. Then she reached the apartment. Her voice changed. I followed Ethan. Hayes waited. I saw him go there more than once. Did he tell you to follow him? No. Did anyone authorize you to? No. What did you do after you found the address? Claire looked down. I gave it to Derek. Even though I already knew. Hearing her say it was different. Maya glanced toward me. I kept my eyes on the speaker. Hayes asked. I thought Ethan was meeting someone there. Who? Maya. Beside me. Maya exhaled once. Nothing more. Claire continued. Derek told me he could find out what was happening. So you gave him the address? Yes. What exactly did you expect him to do? Watch the building. Check who came and went. I don't know. Hayes leaned back. You trusted another man with a location your husband was deliberately keeping private. Claire swallowed. I thought Derek was his colleague. He was. I thought that meant Ethan would be safe. Hayes stared at her. Did Ethan know you gave Derek the address? No. Did you tell Ethan afterward? No. Even after the armed incident at that building. Claire said nothing. That silence lasted long enough to answer the question. Hayes leaned forward. When did you realize the address might have been connected? The news said armed men had entered the building. And I thought about telling Ethan. But you didn't. I was scared. Of what? That he would know I followed him. Hayes's voice remained flat. So even after you realized something dangerous might have happened, you protected your secret first. Claire's eyes filled. I didn't know those men were going there because of me. I believe that. Her head lifted. For the first time, hope appeared on her face. Hayes removed it immediately, but not knowing what Derek intended does not erase what you did. Claire looked down again. I know. No, I don't think you did. Not until Derek started asking questions that frightened you. She flinched. Hayes continued. You were lonely. Yes. You believed your husband might be lying to you. Yes. You believed he might be having an affair. Claire nodded. Hayes folded his hands. Those things explain why you were suspicious. He paused. They do not explain why you gave his private location to someone else. Claire wiped her face. I made a mistake. Hayes shook his head. A mistake is taking the wrong exit. His voice never rose. You followed a federal agent. You searched his belongings. You recorded a location he was hiding. You gave that location to another person. And when armed men appeared there, you said nothing. Each sentence landed separately. Claire stopped trying to defend herself. I know. Her voice was barely audible. I know. For several seconds. No one spoke. Then she asked the question I had expected. Is Ethan alive? My jaw tightened. Hayes looked directly at her. Why are you asking me that? Because he came home after the apartment incident. She looked confused. He acted normal. He ate dinner with Sophie. He helped her draw. He never said anything. Her breathing changed. Did he know? Hayes did not answer. Claire stared at him. Then she understood. Oh God. She covered her mouth. He knew. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Not because I wanted to protect her from the truth. Because I remembered that night. Sophie asking me to draw our house. Claire sitting across from me. Knowing she had sent the address. Choosing silence. I had spent years believing silence protected my family. Claire had used silence to protect herself. Different reasons. Same damage. Claire lowered her hands. Can I talk to him? Hayes looked toward the camera. I pressed the communication switch. No. Claire froze. She recognized my voice immediately. Ethan. I said nothing else. Her face collapsed. I'm sorry. I watched through the monitor. I didn't know Derek was working with criminals. I know. I thought you were cheating on me. I know. I know what you thought. She stopped. My voice stayed calm. That was harder than shouting. You didn't intend to get me killed. Claire began crying. No. But you gave my location to someone you did not understand. I know. And when you thought something had gone wrong, you hid it. She had no answer. I leaned closer to the microphone. We're not talking about our marriage today. Claire looked toward the speaker. Then why am I here? I looked at Hayes, then at Maya. Victor Kane had already told us exactly what frightened him. The central ledger. If he believed it was exposed, he would bring his regional managers together. But the information could not come from another federal file. Derek was already suspicious. Victor was suspicious too. The next message needed to come from somewhere Derek still believed he controlled. Claire. Hayes understood before I said it. He looked at the camera. I nodded. Then I pressed the switch again. Because Derek still thinks you trust him. Claire slowly raised her head. What do you want me to do? Nothing complicated. I looked at the map of Black Harbor's known network on the wall. Drivers, warehouses, recruiters, money handlers, regional coordinators. Pieces of an organization Victor had spent years keeping apart. We were about to give him a reason to bring those pieces together. Claire waited. I spoke into the microphone. Call Derek. Her face went pale. And tell him what? I watched the red recording light beside Hayes. Then I gave her the lie that would decide everything. Tell him we found Black Harbor's central ledger. Claire called Derek at 2:06 that afternoon. She sat alone in the interview room. Hayes, Maya, and I listened from the operations office next door. A recorder captured both sides of the call. Derek answered after the second ring. Claire. His voice sounded concerned. Careful. Exactly as it always had. I need your help. Claire said. What happened? Ethan came home last night. Derek paused. Did he say anything about the harbor? No. Then what did he say? Claire looked toward the one-way glass. I gave her no signal. She already knew the script. He was arguing with someone on the phone. Who? I don't know. Maybe Hayes. What were they arguing about? Claire hesitated long enough to sound frightened. He said they found something. Derek's voice changed. Only slightly. What did they find? A ledger. Silence. Maya started typing. The call was being routed through a cellular tower near Derek's apartment. He was not at headquarters. Claire continued. Ethan called it the central ledger. Derek said nothing for 4 seconds. Then he asked, Are you sure those were the words he used? Yes. What else did he say? That it connected the drivers to the warehouses. Claire looked down at her hands. And the people paying them. Derek's breathing became audible. Where is it? I don't know. Claire. Think. His concern disappeared. The question came too quickly, too sharply. Claire let the silence sit between them. Then she said, He mentioned the Federal Evidence Center. When? I think they're moving it in 2 days. From where? I told you. I don't know. Did he mention a route? No. A vehicle? No. Who else was in the room? Derek. You're scaring me. His tone softened immediately. I'm sorry. He sounded like the helpful colleague again. I'm just trying to understand what Ethan has gotten involved in. I thought you already knew. I know some things. What things? He avoided the question. Don't tell Ethan we spoke. Claire closed her eyes. I won't. I'll find out what the ledger means. The call ended. Maya checked the recording. That should be enough. No, I said. It's enough to make Derek act. Not enough to control how Victor reacted. Derek remained inside his apartment for 23 minutes. Then his phone disconnected from the network. A traffic camera picked up his car heading south. He drove to the same gas station he had used after accessing the first false operation plan. This time, he did not enter the store. He parked beside a public trash container, stayed for 4 minutes, then drove away. A man in a Harbor Freight jacket arrived 9 minutes later. He removed a prepaid phone taped beneath the container lid. Our surveillance team followed him remotely. The man drove to the self-storage facility. Locker 314 opened at 4:01 p.m. The microphone inside the cash box activated. The courier spoke first. The federal source has new information. The calm voice from the previous recording answered. What information? They found the central ledger. No one in the operations room moved, even though we had built the lie. Hearing it reach the other side made it real. The voice asked, who has it? The agency. Where? They're moving it to evidence storage in 2 days. A long silence followed. Then Victor Kane said, that means one of the regional records was compromised. It was the first time Maya matched the speaker to a probable identity with enough confidence to place his name on the screen. Victor Kane, the courier asked, should we intercept the transfer? No. Victor's answer was immediate. If the ledger is real, the transfer will be protected. What do? We verify every regional account. Tonight, tomorrow. Another voice entered the recording. A woman. What about the servers? Separate copies are no longer safe. Victor sounded calm, but the speed of his orders revealed pressure. Bring the route ledgers, the encrypted drives, backup identities, payment records, everything tied to the regional accounts. The woman asked, all managers, all of them. Hayes looked at me. The weakness we had identified was no longer theoretical. Victor was breaking his own structure, bringing separated pieces together. The courier asked for a location. Victor waited before answering. Lakewood. Maya immediately opened a property search. Lakewood Cold Storage appeared on the screen. A refrigerated distribution center on the western edge of Ravenport. Closed to the public 8 months earlier. Still paying electricity and security bills. Registered to a holding company linked to one of Harbor Freight's investors. We finally had the meeting place. Victor gave one more order. Bring the federal source. The courier hesitated. Vaughn, I want to hear the information from him. He has never met anyone above the transport level. He has now. The recording ended. Hayes turned toward me. Derek won't go willingly. He will if he believes refusing is more dangerous. Maya checked the internal monitoring system. Derek had returned to headquarters at 5:18 p.m. He accessed 3 files, then tried to delete his own search history. The system preserved everything. At 5:31, he copied 2 personnel records onto an unauthorized drive. At 5:38, he opened his financial disclosure file. He's preparing to run. Maya said, not yet. I left the operations office. Derek was crossing the parking garage when I reached the lower level. He carried a laptop bag. His pace was faster than usual. Derek. He stopped. For a fraction of a second. Fear crossed his face. Then it disappeared. Ethan. I walked toward him. You leaving early? Long day. He shifted the laptop bag behind his leg. I pretended not to notice. Claire said you called her. His jaw tightened. She called me. What about? She's worried about you. That makes 2 of us. Derek studied my face. He was trying to determine how much I knew. I gave him nothing. Then I lowered my voice. Have you heard anything about a central ledger? His expression remained controlled, but his right hand tightened around the bag. No. Rumor going around. What kind of rumor? That we finally found something that could bring Black Harbor down. Derek forced a smile. Sounds like good news. If it's true. You don't know. Hayes keeps everything close. I let irritation enter my voice. He still doesn't trust anyone. Derek relaxed slightly. That sentence fit the version of me he wanted to believe. The agent who resented Hayes. The husband too distracted to notice Claire's betrayal. The rival who still had no idea who was standing in front of him. Derek glanced toward the garage exit. You should go home. I might. Claire needs you. I held his gaze. She needs honesty. The words struck him, but not in the way he deserved. He believed I was talking about my marriage. Not him. Derek nodded once, then walked toward his car. Maya's voice entered my earpiece. His prepaid phone just activated. I watched Derek place the laptop bag in his trunk. Location. Message says Lakewood Cold Storage. Midnight. Derek got into his car. For several seconds, he did not start the engine. Then he drove away. He could have gone home. He could have contacted internal affairs. He could have confessed before anyone else was hurt. Instead, he went to Lakewood. At 11:52 p.m., surveillance cameras recorded his vehicle entering the cold storage property. 2 armed men met him at the gate. They searched his car, took his phone, then removed his service weapon from its holster. Derek protested. One of the men pushed him against the hood. A tall figure stepped out of the warehouse. Victor Kane did not raise his voice. A man who sells his colleague once, he said, can sell us just as easily. He held out his hand. Derek's weapon was placed in it. Then the warehouse doors closed behind them. By midnight, 11 vehicles had entered Lakewood Cold Storage. They arrived separately. A refrigerated truck came through the main gate. 2 sedans entered from opposite streets. Several regional managers parked in nearby industrial lots and walked the remaining distance. Victor Kane had spent years keeping every part of Black Harbor separated. Our lie about the central ledger had forced him to bring them together. Maya identified 6 senior figures from the surveillance feed: transportation managers, a forged document coordinator, a financial controller connected to Northline Employment Agency. 2 men we had never seen before. Each carried something into the building: metal cases, encrypted drives, paper ledgers, boxes of false identification. Everything we needed was finally under one roof. I entered at 12:26 a.m. My gray maintenance uniform carried the logo of a real refrigeration company cooperating with us. A tool bag hung from my shoulder. My identification card was genuine. The name was not mine. The guard at the service gate checked the work order. Compressor alarm. Unit 4. I didn't hear anything. You wouldn't unless you were standing beside it. He looked at me for several seconds. I looked irritated, not nervous. Workers complain. Intruders try too hard to appear calm. He opened the gate. Stay in the maintenance corridor. I walked inside. Hayes's tactical teams waited beyond the industrial district. No marked vehicles. No active radio signals near the property. We could not move until Black Harbor connected its drives to the central server. Finding the evidence was not enough. We needed complete copies. Maya's voice entered my earpiece. 7 drives connected. How many expected? 9. Then we wait. I reached Unit 4 and opened the compressor panel. Nothing was wrong with it. I connected a small network bridge behind a diagnostic device. Maya entered Lakewood's internal system. I'm in. How long once the last drives connect? For minutes. Footsteps sounded behind me. Derek entered the corridor with an armed guard. His jacket was open. His service weapon was gone. He looked at my uniform, then at my face. For half a second, his eyes narrowed. I struck the compressor casing with a wrench. Pressure valve is sticking. I muttered. The guard pushed Derek toward a side room. Derek looked back once. Then the door closed. The 8th drive connected. 30 seconds later, the 9th appeared. Transfer started. Maya said. Names filled the remote system. Missing victims, drivers, safe houses, payment accounts, buyers, corrupt contacts. Every file Black Harbor had hidden behind separate regional networks was being copied at once. 20%, 39, 58. Then every security camera in the corridor turned toward me. Together, Victor had detected the bridge. Ethan, Maya said, they know someone accessed the server. How much? 67%. Keep copying. A voice came through the building speakers. Seal every exit. Metal barriers dropped across the loading doors. Armed men moved into the hallways. Victor appeared on the upper walkway above the loading floor. He did not shout. Someone brought federal equipment into this building. His gaze moved through the workers. Find him. 2 guards entered my corridor. One raised his rifle. Step away from the panel. Maya said. 82. I lifted my hands. The first guard moved closer. Turn around. I waited until he reached for my shoulder. Then I caught his wrist and drove him into the wall. The second guard raised his weapon. I pulled the first man into his line of fire. The shot struck the ceiling. I took the rifle and smashed its stock into the second man's face. 91. Maya said. The first guard reached for his sidearm. I kicked it beneath a storage rack and locked both men inside the maintenance room. 97. I reached the main refrigeration controls. Hayes, prepare to enter. 100. Maya said. Data secured. I pulled the emergency disconnect. Lakewood went dark. The backup system activated 2 seconds later. Red emergency lights filled the warehouse. I opened the pressure release valve. Cold vapor poured across the loading floor. Visibility disappeared. I activated the building intercom. All personnel evacuate through the west loading door. Victor's voice followed immediately. Hold your positions. Half his men moved west. The rest stayed where they were. For several seconds. No one knew which order was real. That was enough. Hayes's teams breached the north and east entrances. Federal agents, drop your weapons. Gunfire erupted near the loading floor. I did not go after Victor. Not yet. Maya had found a sealed lower room beneath Cold Room 3. No employee access. No refrigeration records. Constant power use. I reached the door. The electronic lock stayed closed when I destroyed the keypad. Magnetic fail-secure system. Then I heard crying from the other side. I placed a breaching strip along the hinges. Move away from the door. The charge blew it inward. 23 people were inside. Mostly women. 3 teenagers. 1 girl had a chain around her ankle. Several raised their hands when they saw my rifle. Federal agent. I said. No one moved. They had been lied to too many times to trust a uniform. I lowered the weapon and placed my identification on the floor. My name is Ethan Cole. I pointed toward the open corridor. Federal teams are inside the building. A woman looked past me. Gunfire echoed in the distance. What if they're waiting for us? I go first. I cut the chain from the teenager's ankle. Then I led them into the service passage. Maya guided us toward the eastern breach. Tactical agents met us halfway. I stayed until the last victim crossed behind their shields. Only then did Maya speak again. Victor is entering the underground utility tunnel. Alone. Derek is with him. Victor was not taking Derek to safety. He was removing the last witness who could connect him to the agency leak. I ran toward the mechanical stairwell. Derek's voice carried from below. I gave you everything. Victor answered calmly. That is why you cannot leave. I reached the tunnel as Victor raised a pistol. I fired. The bullet struck his forearm. His weapon fell. Derek threw himself against the wall. Victor charged before I could shoot again. His shoulder drove into my ribs. We hit a pipe rack. My rifle slid across the floor. Victor struck my jaw. I blocked his next punch and drove my elbow into his throat. He grabbed a steel wrench. The first swing struck my shoulder. Pain ran down my arm. I caught his wrist on the second swing. Twisted. The wrench dropped. Victor reached inside his jacket for a knife. I trapped his hand and drove him into the wall. 2 strikes. Then I forced him face down and secured his wrists. Metal scraped behind me. Derek was reaching for Victor's fallen gun. Don't. He froze. His fingers stopped inches from the weapon. I pointed the rifle at him. Derek looked at my uniform, then at Victor in handcuffs. Understanding slowly replaced fear. You knew. Yes. When? From the second false report. His face changed. The driver, the warehouse, the accountant, every piece of information he had sold, every reaction we had followed. You could have arrested me. Yes. Then why didn't you? I pulled Victor to his feet. Because arresting you would have given us 1 traitor. I looked toward the tunnel entrance. Leaving you in place gave us the entire organization. Derek shook his head. You used me. You gave Black Harbor every message I needed them to receive. He did not resist when I pulled his hands behind his back. I closed the handcuffs around his wrists. You thought you were destroying my operation. I turned him toward the exit. You were building it. Several hours later, agents escorted Derek through headquarters. He passed the main briefing room. My photograph from the Ravenport Harbor ceremony still hung on the wall. Derek stopped. He stared at the medal on my chest. This time, he finally understood. He had spent years asking why the agency always chose me. The answer was now walking beside him in handcuffs. Derek sat in the interrogation room with his hands secured to the table. The tactical uniform had been replaced with gray detention clothing. A bruise darkened his jaw. He had received it when Victor threw him against the hood of his car. Not from me. I watched through the glass as Hayes entered and placed a folder on the table. Inside were the records Derek had tried to delete. His access history, prepaid phone locations, payments connected to Harbor Freight, Claire's statement, the recordings from Locker 314, and footage of Derek entering Lakewood cold storage. Derek glanced at the folder, then at Hayes. Where's Ethan? Being treated. For what? A shoulder injury. Derek laughed without humor. He always survives. Hayes sat across from him. 23 victims survived tonight too. Derek's expression hardened. This isn't about them. That is your problem. Hayes opened the folder. You still think this is about Ethan taking something from you? He did. What? My career. Hayes waited. Derek leaned forward as far as the restraints allowed. I joined the agency the same year he did. My shooting scores were higher. My physical assessments were better. I completed more tactical entries. Yet every promotion went to him. Every important operation went to him. Every time someone needed to stand on a stage, it was Ethan Cole. His voice rose. Hayes did not react. At Ravenport Harbor, a trafficking coordinator ran through the east loading bay. I know what happened. No, Hayes said. You know what you wanted to happen. Derek went silent. You chased the coordinator because catching him would put your name in the report. Ethan heard people trapped inside a refrigerated container. He changed the plan. He saved 17 lives. The coordinator was captured 40 miles later. Hayes closed the folder. Tonight, you tried to destroy Ethan's operation because you wanted him to fail. He used your betrayal to identify Black Harbor's drivers, warehouses, couriers, managers, and leader. He could have arrested you weeks ago. Derek looked toward the glass. He should have. He waited because the victims mattered more than his anger. Hayes stood. You keep asking why we chose Ethan. He moved toward the door. The answer is that you always wanted to be the most important person in the room. Ethan wanted everyone to leave the room alive. The door closed behind him. Derek lowered his head. For the first time, he had no one else to blame. Claire was waiting for me when I left the hospital the next afternoon. Sophie was with Claire's sister. That had been my decision. Whatever happened between us would not happen in front of our daughter. Claire stood beside the passenger door of her car. Her eyes were swollen. I heard about your shoulder. It'll heal. And the people at Lakewood. Safe. She nodded. I'm glad. Silence settled between us. Then Claire spoke. I followed you. I searched your jacket. I recorded the apartment address. I gave it to Derek. Her voice shook. And after I heard armed men had entered the building, I hid what I had done. This time, she did not say she had made a mistake. She named each choice. I didn't know he would give it to criminals. She continued. I didn't know anyone would try to kill you. I know. Hope appeared in her face. I did not let it become forgiveness. But you knew you were giving my location to another man. Claire looked down. Yes, I was gone too often. I canceled plans. I treated secrecy like it excused every silence. Her eyes lifted. I should have found a way to tell you what this life was doing to me. Yes, I should have been more present. Claire took a step closer. Then maybe we can fix it. I shook my head. My absence damaged our marriage. What you did destroyed my trust. She began crying. I can change. I believe you. Then why? Because believing you can change doesn't mean I can live as your husband again. She covered her mouth. I kept my voice calm. You could have confronted me. You could have demanded counseling. You could have separated from me. You could have left. I paused. But you gave a hidden location to someone outside our marriage. I can't ignore that because your intentions were different from the result. Claire wiped her face. What happens to Sophie? We protect her. You're not taking her from me. No, she needs her mother and her father. We tell her that none of this is her fault. Claire nodded slowly. Our marriage ended without shouting. That did not make it painless. 6 months later, Black Harbor no longer existed. Federal teams dismantled 21 locations across 7 states. More than 200 victims were identified or rescued. Victor Kane received multiple life sentences. Derek faced federal charges for conspiracy, obstruction, bribery, attempted murder, and assisting a trafficking organization. The government held another ceremony. This time, I refused to stand alone. Maya stood beside the analysts. Hayes stood with the tactical teams. Local police officers, emergency crews, and investigators filled the stage. The medal belonged to all of them. Afterward, Hayes called me into his office. A new black folder waited on his desk. A young agent saw me enter. He turned to another officer. "Why does Cole always get the important assignments?" I heard the question through the open door. Hayes looked at me. I picked up the folder. "Some people see a trap and think only about escaping. I want to know who is hiding behind it."